If you've ever been told you don't belong, stay with me because in the next 5 seconds my life flips upside down. My father demanded a DNA test. And the results proved I didn't belong to anyone I called family. Before we get into it, only like and subscribe if stories about truth, family, and second chances hit you right in the chest. And tell me your city and the local time. I read the comments more than I should. My name is Ava Hartley. I'm 29, I live in Richmond, Virginia, and for most of my life my father treated my face like an accusation. He loved to say it casually like it was a joke that only landed for him. Too pretty to be mine, he'd tell strangers at cookouts. Look at those green eyes. Someone else must have donated those. People would laugh because they didn't know how heavy a joke can be when it's repeated for decades. My mom, Susan, would tighten her smile and change the subject. My younger brother Jake would stare at his shoes, and I'd stand there holding a paper plate and pretending it didn't hurt. It always hurts. The night everything broke open started like every other family ritual. Sunday dinner at my parents' place in Midlothian, a big brick house my dad never stopped bragging about. He built his contracting company from a pickup truck and a borrowed ladder, and he made sure we knew it. The table was set like a magazine spread, white plates, cloth napkins. Candles my mom lit even when it was still bright outside, like she believed warm light could soften sharp words. My grandmother, Margaret Maggs Collins, sat at the end of the table. Her posture was straight, her hair was silver and pinned into a neat twist, and her eyes had the kind of focus that made you sit up without realizing you were slouching. My dad, Ron Hartley, carved the roast like he was performing surgery. Jake was on his phone under the table. My mom kept refilling everyone's iced tea even though the glasses were already full. Halfway through dinner, my dad put down his knife and wiped his hands as if he'd been waiting for the exact moment the room got quiet. Ava, he said, I'm not walking you down the aisle. The words fell into the space between us and didn't bounce. They just sank. My mom's fork clinked against her plate. Ron, she whispered, please. He ignored her. He reached into the pocket of his blazer, the one he wore even to dinner like he was always ready for a photo, and slid a paper across the table toward me. It was a consent form for a DNA test. His signature was already on it. I've thought about this long enough, he said, voice steady, almost calm. I'm not standing up in front of your fiancé's family smiling like a fool while everybody wonders. We settle it now. Jake's face went pale. My grandmother's eyes narrowed so hard they looked like they could cut glass. I stared at the paper. My name was typed in neat letters. The clinic's logo sat in the corner. You have 6 weeks, Dad continued. Take the test. Share the results with the family. If you're mine, I'll be there. I'll apologize. I'll even pay for that ridiculous band you want. He smiled. It was a smile I'd seen 1,000 times, polite on the surface, cruel underneath. But we both know what the test will show, he added. I didn't cry, I didn't throw my plate, I didn't storm out. I just looked at him and said, thanks for the reminder, Ron, I'll remember this. I called him Ron, not Dad, and it felt like flipping a switch I'd been afraid to touch. On the drive back to my apartment, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My engagement ring flashed under streetlights like it was trying to get my attention. Ethan was waiting when I walked in. He had blueprints spread across our coffee table because he's the kind of person who can't relax without a project. He looked up one time and read my face. What did he say? He asked. I dropped my purse on the floor and handed him the paper. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read. He's serious. He's always serious, I said. My voice sounded calm like it belonged to someone else. I'm tired of defending Mom. I'm tired of pretending his jokes aren't knives. Ethan reached for my hand. Then we do the test. We will end this. I took a breath and felt something shift inside me, not soft, not fragile, something hard and clear. I'll do it, I said. But I'm not doing it his way. The next morning I called an independent lab in Richmond, Riverstone Genetics. Certified, reputable, and not connected to my dad's golf buddies. My mom came over that evening. She didn't even sit down. She stood in our living room twisting her wedding ring until her knuckles went white. Ava, she said, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do, I told her, because he won't stop, because he's been using me as a weapon against you since I was a kid. Her eyes filled. I know, it came out like a confession. That night she agreed to provide a sample too. She pressed the swab to her cheek like it was a prayer. Whatever the results say, she whispered, you're my daughter, that's not changing. I believed her the way you believe the sun will rise even after the worst night. My dad's sample wasn't voluntary. I didn't feel guilty about it. When we visited my parents' house the following weekend, I used the guest bathroom, found his toothbrush, and slid it into a plastic bag like I was collecting evidence. Not my proudest moment, also not my worst. Riverstone told us the results would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks felt like an entire season. During those days, my dad got louder. He emailed relatives. He made phone calls. He told my aunts and uncles that he was finally going to clear the air. One afternoon, a group text lit up my phone, family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Ron, Ava won't take the test, make of that what you will. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Jake called later, voice low. Just do it, he said. It'll be over. Dad will calm down. Jake, I answered. Has Dad ever calmed down? He didn't reply. 2 days before the results were scheduled, my grandmother Mags asked to meet me for coffee. She chose a small diner off Route 60, the kind with sticky menus and bottomless refills. When I slid into the booth, she studied me for a long moment like she was measuring my strength. You kept your birth paperwork? She asked. Yes, I said, confused. You told me to when I went to college. You said I might need it. She nodded. Good, bring it next time you come. All of it? I leaned forward. Why? Mags's fingers tapped the table. Because the night you were born, something didn't sit right with me. My chest tightened. She looked out the window, then back at me. At St. Anne's Hospital, the nurse who brought you in was shaking. Not tired, shaking, scared, shaking. She rushed like she wanted to get out of the room. Maybe it was a hard shift, I offered, trying to keep the ground under my feet. Mags gave me a look. I've been in enough delivery rooms to know the difference between exhaustion and fear. My throat went dry. Did you ever say anything? I tried, she said. Hospitals have a way of closing doors when you ask the wrong questions, but I wrote down a name, head nurse, Linda Carver. The air in the diner suddenly felt too thin. You think, I started. I don't know what I think, she said. But I know your father's cruelty isn't the only thing in this family that's been hiding in the dark. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I pulled out the folder of documents I'd kept in a shoebox for years. Birth certificate, discharge papers, a tiny wristband. My birth certificate listed my time of birth as 2:06 a.m. My mom always said I was born at 2:17. She remembered because the clock in the room had a second hand that clicked loudly, and she counted the minutes between contractions to distract herself. 11 minutes, again with 11 minutes. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. The results arrived on a Wednesday at 9:12 p.m. Ethan was out of town. I was alone in our apartment with the TV on for noise and a bowl of cereal I wasn't eating. I opened the secure file from Riverstone and read the first line. Subject A, Ava Hartley shows 0% genetic match with Subject B, Ronald Hartley. My stomach flipped, but I didn't gasp. That part was expected. I'd lived under that suspicion so long it had carved a place in my body. Then my eyes moved to the next line. Subject A, Ava Hartley shows 0% genetic match with Subject C, Susan Hartley. The room tilted. I read it again and again. 0%, 0, nothing. I wasn't my father's daughter. I wasn't my mother's daughter. My hands went numb. I pressed my palm against the kitchen counter like I could steady reality with pressure. I called the lab's after-hours number. A calm technician talked me through the report with the gentle patience of someone who'd delivered impossible news before. No contamination, she said. No sample mix-up on our end. We reran it twice. The results are conclusive. When I hung up, I slid down the cabinet and sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, and tried to understand how a person can be unconnected to the people who raised them. The next morning, I drove straight to my mom's house. My dad was at a job site. My mom opened the door in her robe, hair still damp, and one look at me made her face drain of color. "Ava," she whispered, "what happened?" I held out my phone. She read the report, her lips moved without sound. Then her knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of the hallway table to keep from falling. "This can't be real," she said. "I know," I whispered. "But I gave birth to you," she insisted, voice rising. "I was in labor for 15 hours. I remember the pain. I remember the doctor. I remember you screaming." I took her hands. They were as cold as winter glass. "I believe you," I said. "Which means something happened at the hospital." The silence between us felt like an elevator dropping. "My time," she said suddenly, eyes wide. "The papers, the time. They never matched what I remember." 11 minutes. We both said it at the same time, like the number had been waiting in our mouths. My mom's breath shuddered. "If you're not my daughter, then my baby is out there," she cried then, deep, shaking sobs that sounded nothing like the quiet crying she did after my dad's insults. This was grief with no place to go. I held her and stared at the wall, thinking about all the years my father had blamed her for something she hadn't done, while the real betrayal had happened behind a hospital curtain. That afternoon, we called St. Anne's Hospital. The woman on the phone was polite in a way that felt rehearsed. "Records from that period are archived," she said. "We can submit a request." "How long?" I asked. 6 to 8 weeks, she replied, my stomach twisted. "My wedding is in 6 weeks. "I'm sorry," she said without sounding sorry. After we hung up, my grandmother Mags arrived like a storm in a cardigan. She took one look at the report and her eyes filled with a fierce kind of anger. "I knew it," she said. "You knew what?" my mom demanded. "I didn't know," Mags corrected, "but I suspected. And I wrote down that nurse's name for a reason." That night I called the number Mags had for Linda Carver. It rang 5 times before a voice answered, sharp and wary. "Hello, Ms. Carver," I said. "My name is Ava Hartley. I was born at St. Anne's Hospital on May 3, 1996. "I believe you were the head nurse that night." Silence. Then, in a voice that suddenly sounded older than I expected, she said, "I can't help you." "Please," I said, "I have DNA evidence. I'm not trying to ruin your life, I just need to know." "Do not call me again," she snapped and hung up. My heart pounded. Ethan called me back from his hotel and listened while I told him. "She sounded scared," I said. Ethan's voice softened. "Then she knows something." I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining a hospital hallway in 1996, a nurse carrying 2 babies, a clipboard, a decision made in seconds that rippled for decades. The next day, my father found out I had the results before I could tell him. Jake, bless his anxious heart, had seen my mom crying and pushed until she showed him the report. My phone rang at noon. Dad's voice was bright with victory. "Well," I closed my eyes, "it says I'm not biologically yours." He exhaled like he'd been holding a breath for 29 years. "I knew it. I knew it." "You were wrong about Mom," I said sharply. "I'm not biologically hers either." Silence. Then he laughed. "That's impossible." "It's not," I said. "It's science. It means something happened at the hospital." His voice turned cold again. "Or it means your mother is lying even bigger than I thought." I felt something snap. "You don't get to do that," I said. "Not anymore." He hung up on me. That evening, he told my mom to leave the house. "I'm done being humiliated," he said, loud enough that the neighbor's dog barked. My mom packed a suitcase with shaking hands while my grandmother stood in the doorway like a guard. I watched, stunned, as my father destroyed the family he claimed to be protecting. I decided then that if he wanted a public truth, he was going to get it. The only problem was finding the other truth, the name of the baby who was supposed to be me. I tried Linda Carver again. Straight to voicemail, I left a different message, voice steady even though my throat burned. "I'm filing with an attorney," I said. "I'm subpoenaing the hospital records. If you are involved, it will come out. If you tell me the truth now, you can be part of fixing it instead of part of hiding it." 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Friday, 1 p.m. Northside Library, second floor study room, come alone. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. Friday came with bright, cruel sunshine. Ethan wanted to come. I told him no. If this woman was frightened, I didn't want her to feel cornered. Northside Library smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. The study room was small, with a round table and a window that overlooked a parking lot. Linda Carver was already there. She was in her late 60s, hair cut short, glasses perched on her nose. Her hands trembled as she held a paper cup of water. She looked up when I entered, and her face changed like she'd seen a ghost. "You look like her," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Like who?" Linda's mouth opened, then closed. She took a shaky breath. "Your biological mother, Claire Bennett." The name hit me like a wave. "I don't know that name," I said. "I know," she replied. "That's the point." She slid a thin notebook across the table. Old, worn, the kind of thing someone keeps when they're afraid their memory will fail them. "My shift notes," she said. "May 3rd. 96, the night you were born." My fingers hovered before touching it like the paper might burn. I read, 2:06 a.m. Baby girl A delivered to Susan Hartley, 7 pounds 1 oz, 2:17 a.m. Baby girl B delivered to Claire Bennett, 6 pounds 6 oz, 2:48 a.m. Bath time, new aid mislabeled bassinets, 3:30 a.m. Error discovered, 4:00 a.m. Administration meeting. Decision: fix paperwork, not families, less disruption. Staff instructed. Confidentiality agreements signed. I lifted my eyes. Linda's were wet. "They knew," I whispered. "Yes," she said, voice breaking. "They knew within hours. They decided it was better to let you both go home with the wrong mothers than to admit the mistake." My stomach turned. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Linda's hands tightened around her cup. "I was 26, new job, single mom. They told me if I spoke, I'd lose my license. They told me I'd never work again. I told myself you were both loved, you were safe, that was enough." "It wasn't enough," I said, and my voice cracked. "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry." I swallowed hard. "Who went home with Claire?" Linda reached into her bag and pulled out a printed page, a social media profile photo. A woman about my age, brown hair, freckles, a smile that looked like it had never been punished. Her name was Mia Bennett. "She lives in Raleigh, North Carolina," Linda said. "She's a pediatric physical therapist." I stared at the picture. Mia's eyes were the exact shade of blue my mom's eyes were. My chest ached. That night, I sat with Ethan at our kitchen table and wrote a message to Mia. I wrote it 12 times. Every version sounded insane. Finally, I typed the simplest truth. "Hi, Mia. My name is Ava Hartley. I was born at St. Anne's Hospital in Richmond on May 3, 1996. I recently took a DNA test that showed I'm not biologically related to the parents who raised me. A former nurse confirmed there was a newborn mix-up that night. I believe you may be the biological daughter of Susan and Ronald Hartley, and I may be the biological daughter of Claire Bennett. I know this is overwhelming. I have documentation and a witness statement. If you're willing to talk, I'm here." I included my phone number and hit send before my fear could stop my fingers. Then I waited. Every hour felt like a year. The next evening at 8:41 p.m. my phone rang. "Is this Ava?" a woman asked, voice shaking. "Yes," I said, barely breathing. "This is Mia," she whispered. I showed your message to my mom." She went quiet. Then she said, "I always felt something was off." We talked for 2 hours. Mia told me she'd been teased her whole life for not looking like her dad. Her mom had joked that she must have a recessive gene package. "Your message made me feel sick," Mia said. "But also weirdly relieved, like an answer to a question I didn't know I was asking." We agreed to do another DNA test, this time comparing Mia to my parents. Riverstone expedited it, 10 days. 10 days until my engagement party. My grandmother, bless her dramatic soul, insisted the party still happen at her house. Not my parents' place, not a country club, her house, her territory. "If your father wants a stage," she said, eyes sparkling with something like revenge, "we'll give him one with better lighting." The engagement party was set for Saturday, 50 guests. Family, friends, church people who'd watched me grow up, co-workers, Ethan's parents, everyone. My dad had been busy charming with his victim's speech. My mom moved into my grandmother's guest room. She walked around like a person holding her breath, waiting for the moment she could finally exhale. My dad showed up late, as usual, in a navy suit and a grin that said he believed the universe was on his side. Jake followed behind him like a shadow, eyes darting, shoulders tight. Linda Carver arrived too, slipping in quietly and taking a seat near the back like she wanted to disappear. And upstairs in my grandmother's study, Mia Bennett waited with Ethan's sister, who kept offering her snacks like kindness could stabilize reality. I wore a teal dress and a calm expression I didn't feel. Ethan's hand rested on my back steady. At 7:30, my dad asked for attention. He clinked a spoon against his glass. The room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he began, voice smooth. "You all know this family has been through a lot." My mom's face tightened. Dad looked directly at me. "I asked Ava to take a DNA test. She finally did." A ripple moved through the crowd. He lifted a paper. "And the results show what I've suspected. She is not my biological daughter," gasps, murmurs. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Dad's voice grew louder, fueled by vindication. "And she is not Susan's either." "Which tells you everything you need to know about the lies I've been living with." My mom flinched like he'd struck her. I stepped forward before the room could drown in his version. "You're right," I said, taking the microphone from his hand. He was so shocked he let me. "The results show I'm not biologically related to either of you." My dad's smile widened. "Exactly, but," I continued, "you're wrong about what it means." The room stilled. I nodded toward the doorway. Ethan walked to the stairs and called, "Mia." A moment later, Mia Bennett stepped into the living room. She wore a simple cream dress. Her brown hair fell in soft waves. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, and my father's face changed, because Mia's cheekbones were his, her nose was his. Her expression, the slight tilt of the head when she was nervous, was Jake's. The crowd made a collective sound like air being sucked out of a balloon. "This is Mia Bennett," I said. My voice was steady because I had practiced it in the mirror for days. "She was born at St. Anne's Hospital 11 minutes after I was, on May 3, 1996. I clicked a remote and the TV behind us lit up with the new Riverstone report. Subject A, Mia Bennett shows 99.99% genetic match with Ronald Hartley. Subject A, Mia Bennett shows 99.98% genetic match with Susan Hartley. Silence crashed over the room. My dad stared at the screen, then at Mia, then at my mom, as if his brain couldn't decide which reality to accept. He rasped, "That's not possible." "It is," I said. "And it means Mom never cheated, not once. It means the hospital made a mistake, discovered it, and covered it up." I gestured toward Linda Carver, who stood slowly, shoulders shaking. "She was the head nurse," I said. "She kept notes. She has a signed statement. She's here to tell you the truth." Linda's voice trembled but didn't break. "Mr. Hartley," she said, "your wife did not betray you. The babies were switched during bathing. The administration decided to fix paperwork instead of fixing families. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took me this long." My dad's face went white, then gray, then something hollow. He looked at Mia, this stranger who carried his DNA, and I watched the arrogance drain out of him like someone pulled a plug. His knees buckled. He went down hard, one hand catching the edge of the coffee table, the other pressed to his chest like he couldn't breathe. The room held its breath. My grandmother Mags, of course, did not move to help him. She folded her arms, lips pressed together, and waited. My mom stepped forward. She stopped in front of him, and for a second I saw the version of her that had carried the family on her back for decades. 29 years, she said, voice quiet but firm. 29 years you made me pay for something I didn't do." My dad looked up, tears on his cheeks, and I swear I'd never seen him cry. "I didn't know," he whispered. "How could I have known? You could have trusted me," she answered. "That's how." Then she turned away from him and walked toward Mia. Mia's eyes were wet. She looked like she was trying not to fall apart in a room full of strangers. My mom held out her hands. "Hi," she said softly, "I'm Susan." I think I'm your mother." Mia made a sound that was half sob, half laugh and stepped into my mom's arms. The room melted into murmurs, crying, whispers, people shifting their understanding of the past in real time. My dad pushed himself up, trembling. Jake stood frozen, staring at Mia like he was looking at his reflection in a different mirror. I spoke again, quieter now. "I'm not here to take anything from anyone," I said. "I'm here to put the truth where it belongs." I looked directly at my father. "And you," I said, "don't get to use this as proof that you were right to hurt us." His shoulders shook. "Ava, I have a name," I said, cutting him off. "I've always had a name, you just chose not to say it with kindness." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The words were small, late, but they existed. After the party, the house felt like it had been through a storm. People left quietly, like they didn't trust their voices. Mia and I sat on the back porch under string lights, sipping iced tea we didn't taste. Ethan sat beside me, arm around my shoulders. Jake sat on the steps, hands clasped, staring into the yard like he was counting blades of grass. "I don't know what to do," Mia admitted. "I love my mom, my dad, they raised me. But now this." My mom sat across from her, eyes gentle. "Nobody has to be replaced," she said. "We can make room." That's all. I realized then that my mother's strength wasn't just surviving my father, it was her ability to expand her heart even after it had been bruised. A week later, we met Claire Bennett. She lived in a small townhouse in Raleigh with potted plants on the porch and wind chimes that clicked softly in the breeze. When she opened the door, my breath caught. She had my chin, my green eyes. The same dimple on the right side when she smiled. "Ava," she whispered, like she'd been saying my name in her head for years. She hugged me and her arms felt like a question finally answered. We sat at her kitchen table for hours. She told me about the baby she thought she'd had, the delivery, the nurse who seemed rushed, the way she'd felt for years that something didn't line up. "I blamed myself," she said, eyes shining. "I thought I wasn't bonding right, I thought I was broken." I shook my head. "You weren't broken. You were lied to." She nodded slowly like she was letting herself believe it. Mia came too and watched from the doorway. Claire looked at her with soft sadness. "I raised you," Claire told Mia, voice trembling, "and I love you. That doesn't disappear." Mia cried into Claire's shoulder and I cried watching them, and for the first time I understood that love can survive facts, even when facts rearrange everything. In the weeks after the party, Mia and I talked almost every day. Some calls were tears, some were jokes, most were just us learning the shape of each other's lives. She showed me her childhood photos and I showed her mine. We traded stories about teachers, birthdays, and the small habits that made us who we are. Every time we found a weird shared trait, how we both hum when we're nervous, how we both alphabetize spice jars, we laughed like the universe was admitting it had been keeping a secret. It didn't fix the past, but it softened the edges of today. My dad paid off my student loans without being asked. He went to therapy, he stopped drinking. He tried, awkwardly, clumsily, to learn how to talk without cutting. My parents separated for a while, then they started counseling. I don't know what their marriage will become. I know my mom finally gets to make choices without fear. Jake and Mia met for dinner a month later. It was awkward until they both reached for the same basket of bread at the same time. "Do you hate cilantro?" Jake blurted. Mia blinked, then laughed. "With my whole soul." Jake's shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. They compared allergies, music tastes. The fact that both of them tapped their right foot when thinking. Watching them was like watching a puzzle piece slide into place, not replacing anything, just filling a space that had always been empty. Later that night, my dad approached me by the dessert table. He looked older than he had a year ago, as if regret had weight. "I can't undo what I did," he said. "But I want to do better from here." I studied with him, the man who'd made my childhood a trial, the man who'd been right about the wrong thing. "Then do better," I said, quietly, consistently. Without expecting applause, he nodded. I will. I didn't forgive him in one moment. Forgiveness isn't a light switch, it's a slow sunrise. But I let him stay in my life under new rules: no cruelty, no jokes with knives, no love that comes with conditions. A few months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. When I held the test in my hand, I thought about DNA, about families, about how biology can be a map but not always a home. This baby would carry my genes, Ethan's genes, traces of people I'd only recently met. But more than that, this baby would carry something my childhood didn't always have: certainty. The certainty of being wanted, the certainty of being loved without having to prove anything. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel like you were evidence instead of a person, hear me, you are not a mistake that needs defending. And if you're the one doing the accusing, ask yourself what your certainty is costing the people around you, because sometimes the truth isn't what you think, sometimes it's bigger. Sometimes it's kinder, and sometimes it takes one DNA test to open a door that should never have been closed in the first place.